Hi everybody, welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden, and I'm the host of this program. Well, here we are in September, and a huge storm has missed us, and we thank God for that. But when you look at the folks that got hit, the islands off the East Coast, parts of North Carolina, and I believe yesterday it landed up somewhere around Nova Scotia, our Canadian friends to the north, Prince Edward Island. And the latest report is that it has fizzled out over the cold waters of the North Atlantic, and we can be very thankful for that. But for the folks that were in its path, well, the official thing is they're saying there's something like 47 dead at least. But I think when they start going through the rubble and they start trying to rebuild and redevelop, I think they're going to find a lot more. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if the death toll reaches up in the 200s and 300s. And that's just off the coast. Now, North Carolina, I'm not sure whether they had any deaths there in North Carolina or not, but they did have high winds and high water. And they had one of the islands off the coast of North Carolina where 800 people that reside there decided to try to outride the storm. But unfortunately, they misjudged Mother Nature in that case. And many of them had to go to the top story in their houses or get on the roof of their houses to avoid being drowned. And I believe the Coast Guard, I think they had to remove somewhere around 800 people to get them off that island. Well, we were very fortunate that it made a made a turn to the right, headed out to sea. Didn't go quite far enough to miss Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. Which, as you know, is just northeast of the state of Maine. And they were hit with a lot of high water and high winds and everything. I believe the wind velocity in Nova Scotia at one time was up to 95 miles an hour. So Devon is now history. It's left a massive destruction in its path. But I think it brings home to us one big lesson, that with all of our sophistication and all of our scientific facts and all the rest of it, we can't stop Mother Nature. We're not able to stop the flooding, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, and the earthquakes and everything else that are occurring. And now California is once again involved in fighting a major forest fire. Guess things are still pretty dry out there. So on and on it goes. The big question is, are we going to be able to combat any of this? Well, for years, the Army Corps of Engineers has been working on flooding in the Mississippi Valley and many of the tributaries that feed into the Mississippi with large dams and cutoffs and everything else. But with a high volume of water this year, they've kind of run into a certain problem. So far, they've been fortunate enough to protect the city of New Orleans. But at the same time, in order to do that, they've had to divert the stream of water, and it has caused flooding in other areas. And some of the smaller farms there in Louisiana are being flooded out in order to save the city of New Orleans. An interesting thing coming up out of the Democratic campaign for President Joe Biden, talking about his home state of Delaware. That basically it's only about 3 feet above sea level. Well, that's cause for concern. Already, areas of Florida are being flooded. as these ice caps melt, the water in the ocean increases, and naturally it's going to push further inland. And much of your land, especially your seacoast land, is going to disappear. It's going to become part of the ocean. And we kind of contrast that when we were talking about drought in California, out in the Midwest, and some of these rivers and streams are drying up out there. And in another part of the country, we have too much water. Somewhere along the line, we've got to figure out a way to take what our surplus of water and be able to transport it into areas where they're battling drought, particularly in the Southwest. Right now, the Colorado River is the main source of water supply for all parts of New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, as it flows into the Pacific. But unless they have heavy snow in the Rocky Mountains, and that snow melt feeds the Colorado River, they're going to have a water shortage problem when you get down into Arizona and Southern Cal, particularly around, say, Los Angeles and San Diego and all that. At one time, there was talk of drawing in water from the ocean and converting salt water into fresh water. And I'm not sure just what happened to that project, but it hasn't gotten a lot of movement lately. But it seems to me that would be a good idea. As the oceans expand, of course, salt water is going to expand. Salt water gets into fresh water. It's the fresh water that's going to come out on the short end. And we could get into a problem where we have an overabundance of salt water and a lack of fresh water. Well, when you look at this situation, you look along the Atlantic coast, sometimes you envy these people that living on the coast in Florida, out in the Georgia Islands and up through around Cape Hatteras and all that area off North Carolina. They say, boy, someday I'd like to have an oceanfront home. But then along comes a huge hurricane, and that beach is more or less eroded, and the home's destroyed, and you thank God that we live inland, and that we are so many feet above sea level. And as the oceans grow and increase, and glaciers melt due to the climate change, which some people say is fiction, but actually is happening, more and more salt water is going to develop and it's going to move inland. And in some cases, it's going to be a real problem along our coastlines, especially for our cities that are built right on the coast. Boston, for instance, and New York, the lower levels of New York City, down through New Jersey, and of course into Delaware, which is a very, very small state, and going down the whole Atlantic coast. So we kind of wait this one out, and you wonder what's going to happen when the next one comes. For the people in Florida, they lucked out this one. And whether they'll be so lucky the next one, well, we don't know. I was watching CBS the other night, and what's her name there? CBS News hostess was doing a show from Jensen Beach in Florida. And Jensen Beach is just outside of Stewart. And my aunt by marriage was the mayor in Stewart. I think she served 3 terms. But anyway, to make a long story short, many years ago, my wife and I, we honeymooned down Jensen Beach. And I remember laying on the beach, nice sunny day, I fell asleep, and I got one heck of a sunburn. So I had to go in the hospital in Stewart. And they had like this big bathtub, and it was filled with a combination of water and baby oil. And I remember the doctor asking, say, well, we have another sunburned patient? And the nurse saying, no, just some dumb Yankee from up north that didn't know enough to stay out of the sun. But, you know, a very beautiful area. It's just south of Port St. Lucie. And for those of you that are baseball fans, you know, Port St. Lucie is where the New York Mets do their spring training. So that was many, many years ago. This month, 24th of September, I will have been widowed 25 years. And it's hard to believe that's been a quarter century. But time flies. And you kind of wonder where it goes. And then you realize you're getting older, and you certainly don't need any evidence of that. I mean, I have a lot of trouble getting around now. And, you know, the years are creeping up on you. And you kind of look, and you look at what you have, your property that you have and all that. And, you know, when you die, that's not going to amount to a hill of beans. In my particular case, I've deeded my property over to Castleton University, and it'll be up to them to dispose of it and whatever they choose. But I've told my nephews, I said, what you want to do when I die, take out of here what you want. You know, I got a roll-top desk and a number of antiques in there, and some furniture they could have, TV set, all the rest of it, including my Romeo trophy. I said, take what you want, because once I'm gone and Castleton claims it, then everything here is theirs. And that's the way it goes. You know, you stop to think about it, and all your worldly possessions, when you die, they're going to go to somebody else. So just maybe a morbid thought, I don't know, but just something in passing. But we look at all those folks that took the brunt of Dorian, and you know, you just have to shake your head. Many of them, of course, they've lost everything. They've lost their homes, they've lost their property. There's one woman that was interviewed on TV, and they asked her, you know, are you going to come back and rebuild? She says, no, I have nothing. Nothing left. No family. There was another lady that was interviewed, and she was rescued. She saw her husband, unable to get her husband, and he died just as she was leaving. And they were unable to get him out in time. So hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories of tragedy. And the more I think about it, the more I meditate on it and talk about it, you know, it makes me very, very thankful that we're living here in Vermont. You know, we complain about the weather, especially in wintertime. But when you look at what's happening around the rest of the country, you went on the West Coast, California, the problem they have with earthquakes. We've had earthquakes here. You know, once in a while there'll be a rumble and things will shake around the house, but we've never had an earthquake to the point where it crumples your highways and your communities, and folks have lost their lives over it. It's never been that bad in this area, even though we get a few that once in a while will shake the dishes and so forth and so on. There was a tornado, or at least a reported tornado, that struck down in the town of Windham, which is in south central Vermont. 2 weeks ago. Did quite a bit of damage down there, but then it dissipated and took off. We don't have major water spouts, such as they have on the coast and in the Great Lakes area. We have minor ones off Lake Champlain, maybe off Bombazine, probably never off St. Catherine. But they can be a problem for both our coasts. And today I was checking a weather report, and they say we're going to have a fall which is going to be very, very warm. And that's great news. And that's the good news. And hopefully it'll be warm when all the folks are up here to look at the foliage. Already the trees are starting to turn as a sign that fall is right around the corner. And it's just a matter of time before it arrives in full force. And of course, with our foliage, it's a major, major factor in the economic welfare of the state for all the tourists that it brings, people that are leaf peeking. And we welcome them to come and stay at our motels and our hotels and eat in our restaurants and everything else. You know, bring your cash with you, and when you go home, leave it here. Great help to the cash flow in the state of Vermont. So the forecast is we're going to have a warm fall, and then the bad news is that we're going to have an extremely cold winter. And that is going to be very, very hard to take. Probably fuel prices will go up. And getting around, of course, it was bitter cold with a lot of snow. It's going to be real, real tough to commute. So probably for much of the winter, a lot of people will be hunkering on down, trying to stay warm, waiting for spring. But you know, the funny thing is, spring, summer, fall, they seem to fly right by. And you get winter, and you never know when it's going to end. Seems to go on and on and on forever, and you say, well, maybe we're headed downhill. And then you get a big snowstorm. And you start all over again, digging out and getting the driveway plowed and the walk shoveled and everything else. And getting so you can get out and get groceries and stuff like that you need to survive. But even at that rate, we don't have it as bad as they have in other parts of the country. And we manage to survive. Vermont's population seems to stay pretty stable, right around 625, 630, maybe we even get up to 650. You know, if the Boston Red Sox depended on the population of Vermont to meet their payroll, they'd never make it. Sometimes you watch a ball game. Look at Fenway Park, for example, last night. The Red Sox playing the Yankees, 35,000 people there. That's more than double the population of the city of Rutland. You see all those folks there watching a baseball game. And I sometimes look at the people that are sitting way out in the bleachers, way in the outfield. I'm sitting at home watching on TV. And those folks have paid $25, $30, $35 for a seat. I mean, I got a seat at home for free, and I got a better view of the action than they do. And also, I don't have to put up with the weather elements. I have to put up with the commercials. Sometimes the commercials drive you up a wall. And then occasionally when they do these interviews, they're saying, hey, you know, get through the interview and pay attention to the ball game. One thing about the Red Sox announcer O'Brien, and I really don't know how he got his job. Well, yeah, I do know. I think I'm going to use the word, I think he sucks up to management. He does it too much, and it's too obvious. But he never says what inning it is. You know, normally an announcer will say, well, it scores 5-4 at the end of 6. He never does. And he's too busy trying to ingratiate himself with probably his bosses there, TC, who's a graduate of St. Michael's College and, in my opinion, is an A1 jerk. Jerry Remy's very good, except Jerry spends too much time now reminiscing about the past. The best color man they got on there right now is Dennis Eckersley. Rather unconventional, says what comes into his mind. Very thorough knowledge of baseball. As you know, Eckersley is a member, was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He has pitched for Cleveland, and with the Red Sox, he was their ace for a while. Then he went to the Chicago Cubs, then to the Oakland A's, and he finally retired. And he's moved back to Boston. So we look at, the good side of life, and I think anytime you have your health and you're able to get a lot of enjoyment out of life, you're very, very fortunate. Very fortunate. And I consider myself to be very, very fortunate, very lucky. Life has its ups and downs, it has its bumps, it has high points, it's happy times, it's sad times, it's disappointing times. But all in all, it makes for a very, very interesting chapter. And life is a challenge. Nobody said it wouldn't be. And it's how you meet that challenge and how you handle it that depends on the kind of life that you are going to have and the happiness you're going to have. Well, speaking of happiness, for Red Sox fans, wait till next year. You got to wonder what's happened to the Red Sox. A year ago, 119 wins altogether. That's counting postseason. This year, they are going to struggle to get to 90. And there won't be any postseason for them either. The problem appears to be their pitching. The pitching staff totally collapsed. And it got so that their starters couldn't get beyond the third or fourth inning. They wore out the bullpen. Most of the people in their bullpen, their relievers, belonged to the minor leagues anyway. They didn't have any business being up in the big leagues. But management makes those decisions. And some of these guys were coming out of the bullpen game after game after game after game. And even for a very experienced veteran, that would wear your arm down. And I think that's what has happened to the Red Sox. Tonight they play their final game of the season against the Yankees. A year ago, the Red Sox won the season series with the Yankees. Right now, they have lost the season series 13 games to 5. And thank God tonight is their last game against the Yankees. Whether the Red Sox can win it, make it 13-6, they play 19 times during the year. Or whether they're going to wrap up at 14-5. Well, they got a shot tonight because they got Rodriguez, the left-hander, who's won 17 games, going after his 18th. So with him pitching, they've got a shot. But knowing the Red Sox, right now this year, it's a long shot. Over the winter, the Red Sox are going to be very, very interesting. What kind of a team they're going to have next year. Two of their high-priced stars can opt out after this year. Martinez, whom they paid big bucks to get him out of Arizona. He has that 2-year option where he can get out of his contract. And another one is David Price, high-priced left-hand pitcher. And he can opt out of his contract, and I think he will. His high moment in Boston with the postseason last year, where he turned things around. But this year he's back to being himself. Certainly isn't worth the money the Sox are paying him. Another question mark is going to be Mookie Betts. Mookie becomes a free agent, and he's going to get big bucks. Now, are those big bucks going to come from the Red Sox? Well, if Martinez stays and Price stays, It's going to be a problem about getting the big bucks to pay Mookie to stay. And if these guys don't opt out and the money is just not available, then you got to ask yourself, where's Mookie going to go? Hopefully not the Yankees. I don't think the Yankees will make a serious bid on him. They've got talent, extreme talent, all the way down the line. But there are a lot of other teams that would be interested in Mookie. Mookie had a great year last year. And this year, like the rest of the club, he has slumped off a bit. So the cost and price for him will be a little bit less than it would have been had he had another super year. And whether he goes with the Red Sox or not remains to be seen. Now turning to football, the NFL. Some surprises yesterday. Watching some of the NFL on TV. It looks like the New England Patriots are going to have no trouble winning the Eastern Division of the American Football Conference. Miami got blown out by Baltimore 59-10, which shows two things. One, they don't have a defense, and two, they don't have an offense. The Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets, well, kind of hard to say about them. Buffalo won at 17-16. The Jets don't have a kicker. And as the announcer said, well, the guy that kicks for the Jets, tomorrow he'll be unemployed. He missed a point after, which is usually a chip shot for a good kicker. And he also missed a 45-yard field goal. Well, the result of that, of course, Buffalo finally got their act together in the second half and won at 17-16. But looking at the Jets and looking at the Bills, I don't think they're going to be any competition for the Pats. New England demolished Pittsburgh last night, 33-3. Everyone thought that would be a real tight ball game. Pittsburgh and the Patriots have each won 6 Super Bowls. And that's the most that any team has won. The Patriots also hold another record. They've lost the most Super Bowls. They've been in 11, they've won 6, they've lost 5. When they got upset by Philadelphia 2 years ago, they claimed the record for the most losses. So in Super Bowl history, you say, well, who do they lose to? Well, let's go way back. Their first time they got in the Super Bowl, they got blown out by the Chicago Bears. The second time, they got beat by Green Bay. Then they went on a winning streak. Their third time, they beat the Rams, who were in L.A. at the time. They beat Carolina, and they beat Philadelphia. Then they lost 2 in a row. To whom? The New York Giants. They were both favored. The Giants were the underdog, and the Giants won it. And they got back on the winning track again when they beat Seattle. And they beat Atlanta. Then they lose to Philly. And last year, they beat the Rams, this time the Rams playing out of L.A. in what was a great defensive battle, 13-3. So the Pats, watching them last night, they look superb. Of course, they're going to have their times in the year when they're going to be down a little bit, and they're going to meet some tougher opposition. First game usually gives an idea who the power is and who it isn't. And right now, you'd have to say the power is going to be the Pats, Kansas City Chiefs, possibly Baltimore with their new quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Out in the West, it's kind of hard to say outside of Kansas City who the power is going to be. Possibly Minnesota in the Central Division. Maybe Dallas in the NFC East. Or possibly Philadelphia. But that's what sports are all about. That's why you have seasons, to see who's going to come out on top and who's going to be in the Super Bowl. Well, with that, may Almighty God and His infinite wisdom continue to bless these United States of America. Have a great week, and we'll see you all next week.